His charities are now simply being used as PR vehicles, and that is sick. That is sick for a man who has so much time on his hands and could be spending every waking moment trying to change the world.
Well, Diana would be turning in her grave.
She really would. Disaster bullies, racists, and tourists who cash in on people's real issues. I don't think there's any way, genuinely, I don't think there's any way Prince Harry and Meghan Markle can recover from what has been a truly eye-opening 2025. I always knew the way these two operated, but they can no longer hide it anymore. And number 23 on our list of the worst moments of 2025, the Sussex's Centre Barley charity meltdown. As the boss from that organisation, Sophie Chandauka, a black woman, which made this particularly difficult for Harry and Meghan, publicly accused Harry of bullying and harassment and attempting to eject her from her position on the African charity. Here she was speaking on Sly News.
Hello and welcome back to Britain Royals Today, the channel where we cut through the noise, examine the headlines, and break down what the royal stories really mean beyond the spin. If you're new here, make sure you subscribe, like, and turn on notifications so you never miss a royal update as it happens. Tonight, we're covering a story that many say marks a turning point in the Sussex saga, with critics arguing that the carefully curated narrative around Prince Harry and Meghan Markle is beginning to unravel in public view. This is analysis, commentary, and reporting on public statements, not allegations. And we'll be examining why the backlash appears to be growing, who's speaking out, and why Hollywood insiders are now said to be distancing themselves.
Really, what Prince Harry wanted to do was to eject me from the organization, and this went on for months. It went on for months through bullying, harassment. I have documentation. There were board meetings where members of the executive team and external strategic advisors were sending me messages saying, should I interrupt? Should I stop this? Oh my gosh, this is so bad. In fact, our strategic advisor for fundraising then sent me a message saying she wouldn't want to ever attend any more board meetings or bring her colleagues because of the treatment. When that failed, Prince Harry started to brief, and his team, sponsors that I'd been speaking to against me and the charity, because that is a sure way of getting me out if it's seen as though I'm not being successful in my fundraising effort.
I mean, Lee Harris, it couldn't be any more damning because, of course, for so long, Harry and Meghan have tried to make out that the reason they're treated so badly and bullied by the world is because Meghan Markle is a half-black woman. There you have an actual talented black woman, Sophie Chandauka, who knows her shit, basically saying, no, they're the real bullies. And they even bullied me as a black woman. And you'll remember Meghan had treated this woman appallingly when they appeared at that polo tournament on stage together. So at the end of the day, to me, this was one of the big moments because all of a sudden the narrative, the Sussex narrative just collapsed.
It's like another mask off moment.
Yes, it was.
Because I remember when this happened and I was speaking to the wife about it and I was saying to her that we always had this impression of Harry and Meghan that they just weren't very nice.
Yes.
Like that they were a bit arrogant and probably have that kind of royal entitlement. Just from all the headlines that you see and the way they've reacted to stuff. So we already had this kind of pitch. And when we saw this happen, we were like, well, it makes perfect sense. Makes absolutely perfect sense. They seem like bullies. I believe every single thing that lady just said. And without any qualification, I'd just be like, yep, you're telling the truth. And I remember seeing, I don't know if it was that long after it, Harry being interviewed after this. He even came across as being a bully in that interview.
Yes.
And I was just like, okay, well, why doesn't anything stick to them? Like, seriously, why? Because they did an investigation on this very thing, and they came out and said they couldn't find any bullying. But there was a couple of caveats, and I'm thinking, I just don't believe that. I don't believe that for a moment.
Yeah, exactly. It was almost like it was the charity commission. It's almost like we don't want to go there.
It was that.
We don't want to go there. Let's leave it to the charity itself. But what's so interesting, of course, Emma, is that both of Harry's African charities collapsed this year. We also had the disaster with African Parks. And it's like for so long, he was being looked after by people within the royal institution. who he claims to hate so much. And all of a sudden, Sophie Chandauka came in. And the reason he didn't like it is because she was like, hang on a moment. This charity is basically operating as some sort of personality vehicle for Harry. And that's no longer working for the charity anymore because of everything that had gone on over the past 5 years, from the Oprah Winfrey interview to Spare, etc., etc. People don't want to put their money into it. So she's like, this isn't working for the people in Africa, for the people of sent to Bali, who Harry is meant to care about. But I would argue, and I think I could back this up, that his charities are now simply being used as PR vehicles. And that is sick. That is sick for a man who has so much time on his hands and could be spending every waking moment trying to change the world.
Well, Diana would be turning in her grave.
She really
right
would.
now. I
She
mean,
really
at the
would.
moment, especially this is like you said, the second charity for things to have kind of just exploded in everyone's face like this. And I mean, you know, bullying, harassment, it has Meghan written all over it for a start. And yet there is some sweet irony about the fact that it's a black woman saying like, no, you guys are the bullies here, when they've spent the last, what is it, like 2-3 years now calling the royal family a bunch of racists, which I don't know, but do you know what I mean? They come out and they say these things all the time. Now the shoe's on the other foot, and all of a sudden they don't like it.
For years, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have presented themselves as victims of an unfair system, positioning their departure from royal life as a moral stand. But in recent weeks, that framing has come under renewed scrutiny. Public attention has intensified following comments from charity boss Sophie Chandauka, whose remarks, now widely discussed, have fueled debate around workplace culture, leadership expectations, and accountability. Importantly, these are claims being publicly discussed, not legal judgments, but the reaction has been swift. Many commentators argue that the tide of public sympathy may be shifting, with audiences asking tougher questions and demanding clearer answers.
And yeah, the fact that it's a charity, it's not just an organisation that's then been passed off and also does a bit of fundraising. It's a charity, and the fact that he's Diana's son just gives it to me just a whole other level of just complete piracy, almost. It's disgusting.
They have like a well-documented history as well of people like leaving because
Yes.
they don't like work. And I checked this out.
So many.
21 departures since, and this covers Archwell, this charity, Invictus Games, and something called Travelist, with at least 21 departures reported by late 2024 to 25. People
And by the
just
way,
don't like working for them.
reports in Vanity Fair as well that they had bullied stuff. Reports in the Hollywood Reporter that they had bullied stuff.
There's
to
a
the point
consistency
where
to it.
some of these staff members have ended up needing psychiatric care. So I just feel like this was the year that the bubble totally burst. Even woke people now. Because, you know, here's the thing. Sophie Chandauka's probably pretty woke. That's
Probably,
my
yeah.
understanding of her. But it doesn't matter, because all of a sudden, Harry and Meghan's treatment is so bad that even if you're woke, you can't defend this. And actually, on a similar note, at number 22, the Sussexes arguably stooped ever lower as they used the unprecedented LA wildfires disaster to reboot their own flop Netflix series and to brief the paparazzi so they could get some positive coverage. Now, quite rightly after this, they became known as disaster tourists in chief. Watch. International outcry, disgust actually, including from the Hollywood community, about her disaster tourism. And here she is at it again, briefing Town and Country magazine that reported Meghan made donations to Altadena teen girls' fire recovery through the Archwell Foundation. And guess what? The cameras just happen to be there. Any other celebrity can do this stuff without being seen, without briefing the media. But Meghan Markle has to tell everyone. And Emma, this was just so gross. I mean, we actually even saw major players in the Hollywood industry, including former actors, coming out and saying, you're just disaster tourists. And again, to me, that was one of those, there's no going back from this moment, because these were the people who were meant to be supporting you, but they see through it.
This is the thing. It is so disgusting. Forgive me for reading this, but I just want to get the figures right, because the LA fires were just so horrendous. But it's more than 200,000 people evacuated, 1.5 million without power, neighborhoods reduced to literally apocalyptic states. And then they signed up for this, to do this thing anonymously to start off with, and then post it all over social media. Like some kind of, it's like them people who go and feed the homeless, and they're like, you should all go out and do this, guys, And I'm all for promoting doing good things, but there's a big difference when you're millionaires who are staying out. I think their Montecito bunker is worth like $14 million, and they want to go out for a few hours and be like, oh yeah, we handed some bottles of water out. Good for you.
But Lee, they were even breaking the law. And I mean, we were able to prove this at the time, because in California, if there is a disaster like this, you've got to stay away from the disaster zone.
Yeah.
But they were actually walking all over these houses that had been destroyed before the occupants of the houses had either been told that their houses were destroyed, because remember, the locals didn't know.
Yeah.
And certainly the locals were not allowed to go back and find out if their houses had been destroyed, what had survived. Yet Harry and Meghan were there with the TMZ cameras in tow, traipsing all over this destroyed property. And I think that's where a lot of the anger came from the local residents.
I can completely understand. The optics are just awful. I mean, for a start. I mean, who's advising them for a start?
Well, I don't think they listen to anyone.
Probably not. Yeah, probably
That's
someone,
the issue.
and they're not listening. It looks awful. I remember seeing at the time, just thinking, even as someone who's not as educated on their daily itinerary or whatever, it was obviously awful to watch that they were doing this. This just seems to be a running theme, Dan.
Yes, it does.
We've just been discussing their charity and the fact that Prince Harry's been using that charity as a kind of PR exercise. Here they are using, again, people who are in some real trouble as a PR exercise. I just think it's...
And you don't hear them talk about it anymore, do you?
No.
I mean, it's when something is considered hot, they think, oh, let's jump on the bandwagon.
These people are probably still trying to, sorry to interrupt, but these people are probably still trying to,
of course they are.
Replace everything that they lost. And
Of course
they're not talking
and
about
Harry and Meghan, by the way, what have they donated? Look, if you actually want to do good, Meghan could have given a portion from every tin of jam sold. Now, it wouldn't have raised much money, guys.
She's not going to sell
She's not
many.
selling much of that jam. And by the way, it's not jam.
would have been
It's
the
like
thought.
running liquid. But the point is, that would have shown that she's actually prepared to put her money where her mouth is.
Perhaps the most striking development comes from Hollywood itself. Following a highly publicized appearance during the tragic Los Angeles wildfires, several industry insiders reportedly criticized what they viewed as a poorly timed PR move. The phrase disaster tourists has circulated online, not as a formal label, but as a reflection of how public perception can harden quickly when optics go wrong. Sources close to entertainment circles suggest that Hollywood enthusiasm for the Sussexes may be cooling, with brands and studios becoming increasingly cautious. In the world of celebrity influence, perception is currency, and many believe that currency is now under pressure. Before we go further, let me know in the comments, has the Sussex narrative lost credibility, or is this just another media pile-on? And don't forget to like this video if you appreciate balanced royal commentary. It really helps support the channel.
Now, look, you see some corporates, Lee, even do this with, say, 1p. They say we're going to give 1p from every jar of jam sold. Nothing from Meghan, because she doesn't really want to care.
She wouldn't want to commit
does it
to it.
for PR. She's not prepared to put her money where her mouth is, and I think it says a lot.
Yeah, just in case they did fly off the shelves, she probably does. She's probably nervous about that being a
100%.
possibility.
Everything for her is about the money.
Absolutely, I think they're vile. Both of them are vile. I'm glad they're not here. As far as I'm aware, the Americans don't even like them
No,
that
they
much.
don't. But
Even
please don't
more.
come back.
Yeah, please don't come back.
Please don't
You
come
can
back
keep
in
them.
2026.
Absolutely.
But at number 21, sticking with the royal theme, and this really was one of the worst moments of the year for not just the British royal family, but I would argue Britain as a whole. King Charles finally forced to strip his brother, the royal formerly known as Prince Andrew, after the Epstein scandal unraveled even more of his private life. It was a big moment of history. We broke the news live on Outspoken this way. Prince Andrew loses everything. In a bombshell statement in the last hour, King Charles has stripped his brother of his title of prince, booted him out of Royal Lodge, and effectively ended any hopes he had of a public rehabilitation. This is a seismic and historic decision as the pressure was being heaped on the cancer-stricken monarch. Some even saying the future of the British monarchy itself is at stake. So this was a difficult one, wasn't it? Because King Charles Lee, obviously suffering from very serious cancer. We've revealed here on Outspoken that it is terminal cancer, incurable cancer. We've tried to deal with that sensitively. Then he really didn't handle this situation with Andrew well at all, because remember, just 2 weeks before that announcement, Lee, he had thought that it was going to be enough just to release this statement from Andrew saying that he wasn't going to use his princely titles anymore, but he was going to stay in Royal Lodge. And Prince William had been advising him to go further, faster. Charles ignored him. And then 2 weeks later, all of a sudden was trying to show, well, I'm a really strong king. And it's like, well, you're not, because you didn't do this in the first place. But obviously, this is family. It's a difficult one. And I will make this point because I've always been nuanced in my coverage here on Outspoken. I've been on a bit of a journey in regards to the story. I certainly, when I was in the MSM, thought, Prince Andrew was the worst person in the world. And you can go back and look at all of my columns celebrating his downfall. I have since learned that really, when it comes to the allegations from Virginia Giuffre, she is not a particularly reliable witness in all of this. And it is a messy, messed up, complicated situation, which you never see, Lee, if you're watching coverage on the British Bashing Corporation, for example, which wants to be very clear. Virginia Giuffre is like an angel on earth. Everything she said is true. And Prince Andrew is basically the devil incarnate himself. Prince Andrew, or the man formerly known as Prince Andrew, of course, he's now just Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, humble Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, made a lot of mistakes, Lee. This is not me defending those mistakes.
No, I get that.
But the story is more complicated than the mainstream media want to make out.
It is a bit more complicated, and you're absolutely right to bring that up, because the only footage that I'd seen on this was actually, as it happens, from the BBC. So before I even knew anything about Virginia Giuffre, I thought everything she was saying was documented fact. And as you rightly pointed out, she is a massive liar.
Yes.
Right? So she is genuinely, was a massive liar, I should say. However, we can't disprove or prove that. However,
and she died over the course of this year.
You
took
are
her own life.
absolutely right to point that out as well.
Makes things a bit more difficult.
It makes it very difficult.
I agree. I mean, I've been on the fence. I was really pro Charles when he took the crown. And I kind of, my views have waned on him a bit, certainly with his eco stuff, which we kind of knew about beforehand. But he has handled this really...
But he said he wasn't going to do it as king, and we trusted him.
I trusted him.
He said he wasn't going to be a political king. He was going to leave all of that at the door.
Went out the window straight away. And I was on GB News actually backing him, saying, no, he'll do it. No, he didn't.
No, I did too.
But with this particular situation, it's been really frustrating as an observer on this, because I've taken the William stance on this. I think he's had this nailed from the start. You've got to nip it in the bud.
Yes.
You've got to sort it out. And I think, look, maybe if I'm being just a human on a human level, Prince Charles or King Charles now just didn't want to put the boot into his brother.
He didn't, because also...
But that shouldn't matter.
Well, it shouldn't, but I guess the briefing from the British royal family, which I actually revealed here on Outspoken because they had privately briefed the mainstream media, I thought it should be public. Part of that briefing, and I actually did think this was fair enough, Emma, was effectively suggesting that we've got to be careful here or we'll have another suicide on our hands in terms of Andrew.
Yeah, no.
You see, and we've already had Epstein. Well, I don't believe that's a suicide, but it's a death, which the deep state says is a suicide. We've had Giuffre, which was definitely a suicide, in my belief. So we've already had 2 suicides connected to this story. It sometimes does feel a bit like the mainstream media will not be happy until Andrew is in a box.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, don't get me wrong, everyone has to be held accountable
Yes.
for what they've done.
Absolutely.
But
Regardless
there-
of who you are.
But you have to have that midpoint. I mean, let's say that Epstein did kill himself. If he did, well, let's look at that situation, because the first thing you think of when you hear that is loads of people might go, oh, he killed himself, that's great, because he was a horrible guy. Okay, well, now he's not serving time for what he did.
Yes.
So
And we're not
let's
able
look
to
at
find
him-
out the truth.
Exactly. Now we have so many more unanswered questions that we will probably never be able to answer.
And that's the backdrop of all of this.
Yes.
Is the fact that we have had no one held to account.
Well,
Exactly.
the only people we've had held to account for Epstein are Brits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Andrew, the royal formerly known as Prince, who's lost everything. Okay, he's not lost his liberty, but I mean, he's lost everything. Come on. He was a prince, he's now not a prince. And Ghislaine Maxwell, who's serving effectively a life sentence in the
I'd
US.
even forgotten
Yeah.
about
But
That's
what
crazy.
about the Americans?
Well, exactly,
You know, what about the goddamn Americans? What about Bill Clinton?
Yeah.
What about Bill Gates, who were all at the Epstein Island?
This is the thing, like you said at the beginning.
Way more
I
than
think,
Andrew.
like a lot of people, especially if you're in the kind of like the journalism world, you've been on a journey with this story.
Yes.
You've been from one end to the other, and I mean, there's theories out there that I'm more leaning towards now that Epstein was an entire orchestrated thing in order to get wealthy, rich, famous royals and everything like that under some kind of mass blackmailing scheme for power. Everything's about power and money. That's what we need to follow. And no, I'm not, because at the end of the day, no matter how much someone wants to try and convince me or give me much money, I'm not going to do anything with a child. So I still think they're still responsible for their actions. But let's look at the psychological angle here. There
Yes.
definitely seems to be a targeting of these huge names.
And
And I think it needs to be looked
It's
at.
outrageous that no one has been held to account for this.
In America? No Americans.
Yeah, no Americans, and I mean we have Ghislaine who has been held accountable, but it
Yeah, but
feels
she's
like, it feels
British.
like but it feels like she's the scapegoat. Almost.
Oh yeah, and she was such
Yeah.
an easy scapegoat. You know,
Yeah.
rich, daughter of a millionairess, British. You know, not in democratic circles, because remember, all of these decisions are being made in New York, a democratic state. So the
Why
whole
is she-
thing to me feels
why
like
is she
a
not
cover-up
naming
still.
names? I want to know why. You know, she's been incarcerated for how long now?
Yeah, she's been thrown under the bus.
She-
why
she
why
is.
was she?
She
not-
must have been.
Well, I
offered
think
a
she
deal
was
or-
holding hope for a Trump pardon, but given how politicized this situation became later in the year, and of course we saw Marjorie Taylor Greene resign as a congressperson, split from Trump in part because of Epstein.
Musk's tweets about
Yes,
Trump. on the
Musk
list.
tweets saying he was on the Epstein files. Huge pressure on Kash Patel and Dan Bongino in the FBI. It does feel like there is more of this to come.
Thank you for watching Britain Royals today. If you enjoyed this breakdown, subscribe, share, and join us again as we continue counting down the 50 worst moments of 2025 and uncover what they reveal about power, influence, and public trust. Until next time, stay curious, stay critical, and stay royal.